Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in another highly interesting Delphi Economic Forum session. We are here to discuss global events in a very interesting era, an era of disorder, to be perfectly honest, and this is the topic of our discussion. So I will move right to the introduction. Alongside me is the German ambassador, Mr. Ernst Reichel. Herr Botschafter, herzlich willkommen.
Vielen Dank.
In body and flesh this year. And we're all here, all healthy. I will start right away because you have served as an ambassador in the Ukraine. You were in Poland for some weeks. You returned some days ago. And I think we are all aware of the fact that Russia's invasion is creating a completely different environment in global politics. So do you think Russia's military plans have been derailed from the initial target, from what President Putin actually had in mind when he launched this operation?
Yes, quite certainly. I think it's fairly clear by now that the original plan was for this campaign to take just a few days, and for Russia to take the major Ukrainian cities.
To be a blitzkrieg.
So a kind of blitzkrieg. And that has clearly not worked out. There are reports that some Russian troops had their parade uniforms already with them for the victory parade in Kyiv. I think this makes very clear that the idea that must have prevailed in the minds of those who take the decisions on war or peace in Moscow, the idea that Ukraine would simply cave in and not resist, that was a delusion, a wishful thinking, but in no way a reflection of Ukraine's reality as it is today.
But it might have been an illusion, and difficulties might be a thing, but do you anticipate President Putin to continue? I mean, does he have an exit strategy at this point? And in this respect, did he underestimate Europe's and NATO's response, maybe not put troops on the ground, but to support Ukraine militarily?
If you watch the rhetoric that comes from Russia these days, I think the conclusion is clear that Russia has no plan B, and that it is going to continue its warfare until the point where either they are successful or where it becomes inevitable that they have to stop hostilities. I don't think we are there yet, and yes, I think indeed the unified Western response that we have seen must have been a tremendous disappointment and surprise to Russia, because the common opinion in Russia about Europe and the West is that we are decadent, weak, and disunited, and it has been shown. I really believe that when it counts, we come together and we stand to our core principles.
Do we need to do more as European Union, as NATO partners? Do we need to send in more arms, more artillery?
Yes, I think we are likely moving into the phase, to a second phase of the war, which is going to be a war of attrition, which means each side will continue fighting until it becomes exhausted, and it will be up to us and in our very own interest to see to it that Ukraine does not get exhausted before Russia gets exhausted, and that means
yes,
and that means sending weapons and at the same time imposing severe sanctions, as we have done and are continuing doing, to weaken the Russian ability to wage this war.
I will come to the sanctions part in just a few moments, because I think you are one of the most interesting talking partners on this topic because of Germany's role in this discussion in Europe. But starting the discussion about Europe's reaction to this new situation, this was the end of illusions for us as European Union. as a peace installation. So it occurs to me, however, that there is some kind of a fatigue. For instance, you were referring to sanctions. I do not see a lot of EU countries willing to impose more and more sanctions. We have Coreper debates. We have diplomats discussing on and on about sanctions that may be futile.
I think that's typical journalistic impatience with diplomatic processes, if I may say.
There is always an incompatibility.
Yes.
On those.
No, I mean,
the
first thing to say is the fact is we have already imposed sanctions in a magnitude that was not imaginable before. That is a tremendous political leap forward, if you like. And so what is left to do, it has correspondingly become less and less. Now, there is a very strong debate in Germany and many other countries about an embargo on Russian energy.
Yes.
Now, that is something where one has to consider not only Germany, but the entirety of the European Union.
I see many member states arguing that this should be a matter.
There are those who argue so, and there are those who argue differently, because I think also because the dependencies on Russian energy vary strongly within the European Union.
Sure.
And it is and one of the core principles of sanctions, wherever they are applied, are that they should be harming the sanctioned party more than the sanctioning party. And that is exactly, I think, the matter around which the debate is going right now. Who depends more on energy deliveries from Russia? Us who buy the energy, or the Russians who receive the money for it?
But is Germany ready for a discussion to move away from Russian resources, from oil and gas, in a medium term and not in the short term?
In a medium term, most certainly. This has been said many times by the German government. The question is only whether this should be an abrupt stop as a sort of immediate sanction with the expectation or the hope that this will end the war in the short term, or whether this should be a gradual process which allows us as the sort of the recipients of Russian energy to sort of mitigate the consequences and devise and apply alternative strategies for our energy.
Does Germany have a plan B if those steps were to be more aggressive and quicker than expected?
I mean, we all decide together what these steps are going to be.
Yes.
So as we stand right now, as long as Germany says, no, we are not going to cut the deliveries of Russian pipeline gas, then we don't need a plan B. But of course, in the case that we change our minds and we all decide that this is a useful thing to do, then we will need, of course, to find very quickly and in large amounts alternative solutions for our citizens and for our economies.
I am insisting only because because I see more and more countries arguing that this should be a much more quick and aggressive decision. And I'm not only talking about the Baltic states, I'm not talking about Lithuania or Estonia. I'm seeing, for instance, that France or Italy or Spain are in a position to go quicker. Yes, or are willing to go quicker.
Yes, but this has largely also to do with the varying degrees of dependency. Germany is not the only country that has a high reliance on Russian energy. For instance, Slovakia has 100%. And what I miss, I have to say that in criticizing my own society, what I miss in the German debate is a discussion about not whether Germany can manage to live without Russian gas, but whether our European partners can all manage to live without Russian gas. I mean, I would dare say that the German economy is more resilient than some other European economies, which may have in percentage a lower dependence on Russian gas, but may not be able to bear the consequences, the economic consequences of an abrupt boycott, as well as Germany might.
I would like to look at the bigger picture, and I would like to ask a direct question. In all honesty, does Germany bear some kind of responsibility for Russia's greed? Because Chancellor Merkel followed an appeasement policy on the basis of the economic cooperation with Moscow, which seems to have been fueling Putin's plans.
No, I don't agree at all with this characterization as appeasement policy. What happened at hindsight, we know better than we know now.
Sure.
It is of course true that the effort over decades, which I personally was part of also, to bind Russia into a web of dependency and to develop trust, that this effort has ultimately failed.
Yes.
But I wouldn't call that appeasement policy. Now we know better, and if we want to use such reproaches at hindsight, we should not be only talking about Germany, and particularly not talking about Chancellor Merkel.
Who should we be talking about?
No, I don't want. I'm not in the finger-pointing business, but let's say, I mean, Germany has not been isolated at all with its efforts to sort of engage Russia and by these means avoid the outcome which we are having now.
Yes.
And those who say we've always told you so, they may be some kind of historically right, but at the time when the decision was taken, they were suggesting that we should not make the effort with Russia, which I find a questionable assumption.
Yes, however, Vladimir Putin did not decide in 2022 to change the landscape at such a rapid pace. There was the annexation of Crimea in 2014.
Correct.
And even then, the European Union and Germany, among European partners, as a prominent EU member state, did not take stock that Putin's aggression might continue and we might have a second Crimea.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. I mean, this is an assumption you're making. I think we were pretty clear-eyed about what Russia, in the direction in which Russia is developing. Only the conclusion we drew was not to abruptly stop sort of all interaction with Russia, or to sort of we did confront Russia, and particularly Chancellor Merkel was always very clear-eyed about Russia. I can attest to that myself. But we tried to sort of get along with Russia and continue a minimum of relationship and maybe develop more understanding. Now that didn't work out, but that doesn't lead me to the conclusion that the effort in itself was useless.
We have spent almost 15 minutes in our discussion. This might be a first for you in a Delphi Economic Forum panel, and we have not talked about Turkey, so I'm going to come to Turkey right now.
Yeah, that's inevitable. Yes.
You see what Vladimir Putin has done to our conversation.
Yeah. Right.
So how do you see Turkey's role in the equation, and what does this role mean for the stability in the entire East Med region?
Well, I mean, in relation to the war that Russia is waging, it's obvious that Turkey is trying to play the role of a go-between, of a place where the two sides can meet and talk, while avoiding sanctions. That is, avoiding to join the sanctions we have been imposing together. Now, that is not a satisfactory position to take for a NATO member in a situation where we're speaking about war and peace.
Yes. I think it's the only NATO partner not imposing harsh sanctions on Russia.
Yeah. No, so I mean, there's dissatisfaction about this fact. But on the other hand, it's also well known, obvious that both the Russians and the Ukrainians don't seem to mind. Yeah. So who are we? So yes, that is unsatisfactory, and we of course would like to see things differently.
But however, does Turkey mean business when it indicates that it wants to take a more Western approach after years of creating instability in the broader East Med region and having expansionist views with Libya and other places of the nearby geography? Because I'm not sure if this is just taking a step back or it is a new strategy to avoid tensions and have a new presence in our alliance and in our territory.
All right, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, we have.
I'm not sure about that. Yours might be better.
Okay, I will try mine then. This sort of new tactics, strategy, whatever you like, which Turkey is showing to sort of not stoke further tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean, and also in the Arab world, is started well before the war began. So it is not. I don't think it is a consequence of the war. I'm fairly optimistic that it will remain in place for this year. Let's say.
For this year.
For this year. But I wouldn't go further than that, because in 2023 we will have elections, both in Greece and in Turkey, and of course it is a temptation to leaders, and it is well known that Erdogan has given into it on earlier occasions to play with international tensions, to create a rally around the flag effect.
I bet it on your special knowledge, because Chancellor Merkel had a good relationship to President Erdogan, a working relationship, because they had actually parallel ways. They were, I think President Erdogan was in power when Chancellor Merkel was elected in 2005. So Germany's role in not imposing sanctions upon Turkey in 2020 was crucial. I'm not putting a blame on Germany. I'm just saying that Germany always had an approach that we should work together with Turkey. However, I'm still not convinced whether Turkey is interested in working with us or is just taking a step back.
No, I'm not certain either. But I would point out that the EU has taken sanctions against Turkey, and that of course with the agreement of Germany. Now we are in a certain way. We alluded to this in the previous question. In a certain way, we are in a different environment on this issue of sanctions, because it appears that not specifically Germany, but other important countries have a renewed interest in Turkey and its regional role under the new circumstances. So I think that is all right, as long as what we described, Turkey sort of does its part by not creating further tensions.
My last question has a Greek focus, but it has a European focus. It is definite that Russia's invasion in Ukraine will have economic implications upon our economies. But you said 2023 is an election year for Greece. Do you think what has been achieved, the stability that has been achieved, and the prospect of good economic growth can be maintained, and is German investment interest at high levels? Could you say that?
Well, it is very difficult to predict, in particular the development of energy prices at this point. But one thing seems clear to me: we will have an even stronger push towards renewable energy than we would have had without this war. And Greece stands to benefit strategically from this push toward renewable energies, because Greece has, by sheer luck and climate, has excellent conditions to be a major producer of renewable energy. So therefore I think that also German interest, which is very marked in this area, is unlikely to diminish and may even increase further. It is already pretty high right now.
I would like to have another 20 minutes with you, Mr. Ambassador. I always enjoy our discussions.
Same here.
Thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I don't want to take any more time from Ambassador Payet and my good colleague Apostolos Mangiriadis following up. Thank you all very much for your attention and your presence here.
Thank you.